And welcome to another edition of the Black and Gold Breakdown. Jarrett Bailey from USA Today with you. Joined today by one of the, if not the best voice of Steelers Twitter, one of the more insightful guys when it comes to X's and O's. You guys know him as Steelers DB. Derrick, it's good to see you, my buddy. How are you?
Doing good, man. I appreciate you having me on. Been watching a lot of the videos on the YouTube channel. It's doing really well. So I'm excited to, make my first appearance on here and talk some Steelers football.
It's always a good time to do that, and always fun to do that, especially as we're just, a few weeks now away from camp kicking off. Exactly. What are you going to be up there for any stretch of days?
I'm not sure. We're still trying to figure that out. I think working out some logistics stuff on our side as far as, who's going to be doing what. For me, travel's a little bit sketchy right now because my wife's pregnant. So we're trying to figure out, if I'm going to be able to do that at this point too. So I'm excited about it. I'm hopeful to at least get up there for like a weekend or something, but we'll just have to see how it plays out. So,
well, congratulations on the new baby, buddy. That's very exciting.
Appreciate that, man. It's number 2 and the last one for your boy, so it's a wrap after this. But I'm really excited about it. So
I'm glad to hear it, my friend. So yes, this is the show where we will be discussing the biggest games on the Steelers schedule. One that pops off right off the bat is Week 1, facing off against San Francisco 49ers, team that was just in the NFC Championship game. It feels like until the end of time, we will be spending the offseason wondering who will be the 49ers Week 1 starter. And this year's no different. Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is it going to be Brock Purdy? It seems like Purdy, if he's ready to go, he will be the guy Week 1. But regardless, this is a tough defense that the 49ers have. A lot of weapons offensively with Debo, George Kittle, Trent Williams, really good left tackle. We obviously know how good of a play caller and play designer Kyle Shanahan is. Your thoughts on the 49ers? And, first of all, the Steelers get a home game Week 1, which has been a rarity as of late. But regardless, thoughts on the 49ers kicking off the year?
Yeah, man, dude, it's crazy to think about. But I was there for the home opener in 2014 when they played the Browns. And, that was like one of the first games I took my wife to, she was my girlfriend at the time. Now she's my wife. But it's been so long since they've opened up at home. And every year we've just been kind of waiting to see, and it's finally happening. So,
that's not the last time they opened at home, was it?
Yeah. Last time they opened at home was 2014.
It's been 9 goddamn years since they opened it.
Yep. Because I think just the way it works out, I think that the Pirates have been at home like during that weekend every year since. So the Steelers haven't played, and that's normally how that works. So
I never thought of the logistics of that. I guess that makes sense.
I'm guessing it's a parking thing. I
would assume.
But no, I totally agree with you. The Niners is definitely one of the games that I'm most excited for. You hit on some of the big players on both sides. The Niners have so many weapons offensively, and they're so talented on defense that, you just look at their roster. I don't think that you can really argue that they're, anything less than like a top 5 roster, probably like top 3, especially if you're given the Shanahan boost to whoever's playing quarterback, which I think everybody knows to do at this point. So, just from a Niners standpoint, they have some of my favorite players to watch in terms of just film study. I think Brandon Ayuk is one of the most underrated players, particularly receivers in the league. Excellent 3-level threat, can make plays happen, can make a lot of things happen with the ball in his hands. He's really developed over the last couple of years. He was awesome last year. And then just on defense, I think it really just starts with Bosa, man. Like,
exactly.
that dude is an absolute freak. And we talk about, giving the Steelers a really good test out of the gate. I think they're going to be tested in some really important ways. If Broderick Jones does start Week 1, he'll see a little bit of Bosa, who plays both sides of the defensive line. I'm sure they're going to try to, manipulate that matchup a little bit to see what the rookies got early on. So it's going to be a really good test for the Steelers to, just start off the season, at home, which is what everybody wants to see, but also against one of the best teams in the NFL.
Well, I know one thing I'm doing, and that's betting the under, regardless of what it is. These are 2 of the 5 best defenses in football. It's going to be early tests for guys like, Patrick Peterson, who's new to the team, Joey Porter Jr., Levi Wallace, who, they signed last year from Buffalo, was in and out of the lineup for a lot of the year. But specifically the edge rushers, we get to see more of Watt and Highsmith. How is that going to look against, they're going to have a new tackle with Mike McGlinchey gone, but Trent Williams is still on that left side. So both sides of the ball are going to be tested very early for both teams, really. But the Steelers, the last 2 years, they've been heavily, you look at the teams that they faced week one, it's been all right. It's Buffalo in 2020 or 2021, and then Cincinnati last year, and they weren't favored to win either of those games. They probably didn't have much business winning either of those games, to be honest, and they pulled out both of them. Pittsburgh historically really good week one. I mean, you remember they won, I think, 11 straight week one games from around 03 to like 2012, 2013. So historically really good week one. Mike Tomlin's going to have the team ready. I've said all offseason that since the schedule came out, that they're winning this game. I don't know if that's the way that you're leaning.
Oh boy. That's really interesting to me. I want to see who's playing quarterback, but I do think that the one thing that does really play in their favor is the fact that there's uncertainty around who's going to play. I mean, I know that the Niners seem really confident that Purdy's, rehab is going really well. You just don't know, man. Those elbow injuries, they're tricky, right? Yeah, anything to do with the quarterback's arm, it always makes me do a little bit of a double take. So, if I'll say this, if Purdy doesn't play at all, in the preseason and we don't have, visual confirmation that he's like really ready to go, I really like the Steelers' chances in that one as well. And, I was just thinking about it. We didn't even talk about, arguably, the best tackle in football and Trent Williams. That's going to be an excellent test.
It will be.
Last year, Trent was healthy for all 17 games. That's really been the only, thing you can really even knock Trent on, is that he's missed some time over the course of his career with some little kind of nagging injuries. But, he played 17 games last season, 550 pass snaps, and he gave up, all of 19 pressures and 2 quarterback hits. I mean, he was absolutely dominant. So you talk about, Alex Highsmith heading into a contract year, a really good way to stand out is, you go look like a dude against one of the premier dudes at the position. So I'm really excited to see about that matchup. Highsmith's speed against, Trent Williams, just overall, just pure dominance. So
the next week they have their first of 2 matchups against Cleveland. That is also at home, and it's on Monday Night Football. With Cleveland, I think that they are maybe the biggest wild card, not just in the division, but in like the entire conference. Like, it all depends on Watson. And if he doesn't look good early, then obviously, again, Pittsburgh being at home, they're historically really good on Monday Night Football as well. Like a bunch of things weighing in their favor right now, going into the early matchup with Cleveland. But this will be a litmus test for the Browns as well, because I think there's a lot of people, when we talk about the AFC North, at least for me, at least one of these teams is probably going to be, not live up to expectations. And if I have to bet on one of them, it's going to be the team that has shown that they won't reach expectations for the past 20 years, and that's Cleveland. So this will be a litmus test for the Browns, and I think it'll be more of an important game for the Browns at this point than it would be Pittsburgh.
Yeah, totally agree, man. I mean, like you said, I think it all comes down to Deshaun Watson. When they acquired him, even off of the long, kind of suspension, holdout, whatever, it's just different when you don't play football for that long, man. Like that the odds normally don't look great. But Watson's still young. We'll have to see, man. I know everybody's excited about Cleveland. I'll just say this. Cleveland did a lot of things defensively that I thought they needed to do. Bringing in Dalvin Tomlinson to help shore up that run game. They could not stop the run to save their lives last year. They had talent defensively, but they had just ginormous hole in the middle of their defense. And I think Tomlinson kind of helps shore that up a little bit. I like the addition of Zadarius Smith. They basically got him for, pennies on the dollar from Minnesota. Yeah. So, and then Jim Schwartz, they were really, very passive, I would say, on defense last season, and Schwartz is not. So he's going to put Myles Garrett in a lot of advantageous situations. So I think the defense will be solid. They've got 2 good corners in Denzel Ward and Greg Newsome. I think the defense will be solid and improved under Jim Schwartz. But like you said, man, it all comes down to Watson. Last year, 3 big-time throws, 9 turnover-worthy plays, according to Pro Football Focus. I mean, that pretty much tells the story. I mean, when I watched Watson, I didn't see anything even remotely similar to what I thought we were going to see, even after the layoff. I thought it was pretty rough tape.
The thing with Watson too, I mean, you just pointed out, like, I think that there were glimpses like here and there of like, oh, okay, that guy's still in there somewhere. Um, Watching the Washington game, like him and Donovan Peoples-Jones seemed to like start getting a lot of chemistry in that game.
Mm-hmm.
But then you watch a game like the game against Baltimore, and you're like, oh my god, this is horrible. Like, I think that there will be some sort of happy medium. Like, I don't think we're going to see him like Russell Wilson last year. I don't think that we're going to see like consensus top 5 quarterback Deshaun Watson. But I do think that there will be, can he be in that like tier 3, tier 4 of guys with like Kirk and guys like that? I think so. What happened early on, I think that's the biggest question. I think that will favor the Steelers, the fact that they get them that early. And they're probably still figuring things out. And I think it'll also depend on, we saw this last year, it'll depend on how much their starters play in preseason, because the Bengals didn't play their starters at all in preseason last year, and they got off to that sluggish start. So if the Browns, play it safe in August, the first few weeks of September are going to be, a feel it out type situation.
Yeah, definitely. And like you said, I think a middle ground is probably the most realistic expectation maybe for Watson and Cleveland next year. As he adjusts to, they're doing a lot of tweaks on offense. It seems like they want to be in shotgun more. They want to be a little bit more spread, a little bit more gun run than they've been in the past. All those things make sense to accommodate Watson's skill set. But, even if Watson is, let's just call it, I really don't like quarterback rankings, but let's just call it in that tier 3, like you said, the good, but not, maybe the guys that you win
with, not because
but because of, even if he's in that tier, that contract's not going to be good. You know what I'm saying? Like, quarterbacks get overpaid.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. Even that realistic scenario, I think, is a long shot compared to where he really needs to be in order for that investment that they made in him to pay off.
Sure. So. And you pointed out the gun run stuff. Like Nick Chubb, you look at his numbers, yards per carry, yards per, everything was better when they went more gun run. So I think that we're going to see a lot more of that this year as well. Jacksonville Jaguars at home. Now, last time the Steelers played the Jacksonville Jaguars at home in a regular season game, they lost 30-9.
I was there for that one too.
I'm sorry to hear that. Ben tossed 5 interceptions, and yeah, it was rough. And the last time they played them at home in period, they lose in the playoffs, when everybody was like, all right, well, the Steelers are going to win. It's going to be Patriots-Steelers AFC Championship game. And Blake Bortles and Mike Tomlin, to an extent, said, hold our beer. We're not going to let that happen.
Yeah.
This takes place right before the turn of the calendar into November. So middle of the year in Pittsburgh. That's another thing for Pittsburgh. Like, a lot of their toughest games played at home, and this is one of them. Trevor Lawrence, he's my pick to win MVP this year. You look at the core of guys he has now. Christian Kirk had a really good year last year. I think Zay Jones now being the number 3 receiver on that offense is really good. Evan Ingram, really productive at tight end, and obviously Agent Zero Calvin Ridley coming over from Atlanta. I really like Jacksonville, man. I don't think the Steelers win this game, but if they can at least look respectable and keep it close, which I think they will. I mean, they got the parts to make that happen. If they look formidable here, I think this will be kind of a litmus test for them too, to see kind of where they stack amongst playoff teams in the AFC.
Yeah, totally agree. I think that the Jags are one of the most interesting teams in the NFL next season for me in particular. So, the division games are what they are. You're really excited to see how Pittsburgh's going to match up with teams in their division. That's incredibly important for making the playoffs. But I think I agree with you that Jacksonville is a team that's really primed to make a significant leap next season. It's really because of, the growth of Trevor Lawrence, Doug Peterson. They've added, a significant weapon, hopefully, in what's going to be Calvin Ridley. So Lawrence last year, you saw the flashes early in the season, even after that, really tough Denver game that he threw a couple bad interceptions. Really after that, man, he was absolutely lights out. I mean,
we saw it really early on against the Chargers in week 3 where he just went balls to the wall and was making a ton of tight window throws.
And that was really the case all season long. When I watched, I'm actually reading Bobby Peters' book right now about the 2022 Jags. That's a great book if y'all want to check out kind of some X's and O's behind their offense. But, just when I've studied them in the offseason, Lawrence was having to make as good as Peterson is with his play calling, his play design, Lawrence still had to make a lot of tough throws just because, Marvin Jones really can't separate at this point of his career. Zay Jones is a little bit up and down, like you said. Definitely better off suited as like a wide receiver 3 type. So now that he's going to get more help, it's good.
Lawrence's best throw of the year was against Tennessee, and he had Christian Kirk coming on a crosser, and he had Zay Jones down the middle of the field.
The deep post?
The deep post, yeah, where it hits him directly in the face. After Trevor's not even set, he's still shuffling to his left, uncorks a piss missile when he's got Kirk wide open. First of all, that's just one of the ballsiest throws ever when you've got a guy wide open in the middle of the field, and you say, "Nope, I can get it there," and he did. And Zay Jones just drops it. He should have served prison time for that. It was a beautiful throw.
Yeah. Yes, do you know what that reminds me of, man? That quote from Mahomes that came out like his first year starting when he was like lighting up the league about how Kansas City knew they had a dude, and they were sitting there in film study, and Mahomes was a rookie. And I really wish I could give credit for whatever story this was, but Mahomes is a rookie, and they're doing film study, and they're going over this play, and they're basically saying, all right, where would you go with this ball against this coverage? And, Alex Smith is going with the very like playbook type answer. Okay, if I get cover 3, this is exactly where I go, whatever. And everyone in the room, gives kind of the same generic answer. And he goes, shit, I'd take the post. And he goes, I'd throw it over the top. And like they rewind the tape. And sure enough, there was like a safety that's just standing flat footed. And they're like, wait, you have the arm to make that throw. Like we've never had a dude that can make that throw. And then, we've seen what Mahomes has done since. So that arm talent, and it's hard not to get excited about seeing Lawrence, man. He's so freaking fun to watch. You talk about the Tennessee game. I think back to that Baltimore comeback.
I think that was kind of his coming out party.
He was so nails in that game, dude. Like it was just tough throw over tough. It was awesome. So I enjoy watching big time quarterbacks, man.
That final drive, he makes a throw to the sideline where it's some sort of zone look. I want to say there's a guy in the flat, and he's got a safety coming up over the top, and Marvin Jones is running like a corner post, and he fits it in right before the safety gets there. And then the very next play, they run. I can't remember what they ran, but they had a receiver close to the line of scrimmage in the slot who runs like a wheel, and they set like a pick, and Trevor fits it in right before the safety gets there as well. So like it's back-to-back throws there, and then he throws the touchdown, obviously, and just a beautiful jump ball, and then the 2-point conversion. The Chargers game was an incredible game. I think a comeback against a good Ravens team, a good Ravens defense, and doing it when they needed a win, especially like down the stretch when they needed to win just about every game. Doing it then, I think that was him finally being able to say, yeah, I was worth the hype then. It was good to see. That's going to be a tough game. I do think that I'm going to lean Jacksonville. Like I said, Trevor Lawrence is my MVP pick. I think that they're a sneaky team that could host the AFC Championship game this year. Really like Jacksonville a lot.
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it's going to be a good litmus test for the Steelers defense. I think that Jacksonville is a really tough team to game plan for, not just because of what they can do in the passing game, but, ETN, that inside zone scheme, he's a guy that really is pretty dangerous with the ball in his hands. He can break, explosive plays, anytime he touches it. So, and then Jacksonville, I think they've done some decent stuff on defense too. Their defense was a little bit better as the season kind of progressed last year. They've got guys that I think they're kind of waiting on in terms of breaking out. Josh Allen is a guy that I think that has always been talented to me when I watch him on tape, but maybe hasn't had, the huge breakout year. So that could potentially be coming this year too. So it's going to be a good test for the Steelers. I just, in general, when I think about the Steelers and where they're wanting to head in terms of the postseason, it's going to come at the expense of going through some of these top level quarterbacks. I need to see if, this offense in particular can keep up with explosive offenses in Kansas City and, Cincinnati and offenses like that in order to be real confident that this team can not only make the playoffs, but actually, win a playoff game or go to the AFC Championship game, something like that.
Cincinnati Bengals, obviously they'll play them twice. They don't play the Bengals until November 26th. So a late first season matchup with Cincinnati. And that first one is on the road, and then the second one at Heinz Field, December 23rd. So they beat Cincinnati in the craziest game I've ever watched as a fan in my life. And it almost put me in the hospital. That game, it's going to be hard to ever top everything that went down, Minka Fitzpatrick just taking over, and Deontay Johnson making a ridiculous catch, Mitch finding Freiermuth to set up a game-winning field goal. It was insane all over the place. And look, they hung around with Kenny in the second game against the Bengals. The defense just couldn't stop anybody. But I think that that was the game for me where I wanted to see Kenny make some throws, and he did, especially that deep one to Pickens that resulted in a touchdown. Like, I think he knew that he had something to prove in his first big game against Cincinnati. He went out and did it. He kept the game close. I'm hesitant to say that they can steal one from the Bengals just because they're so good, but at the same time, when's the last time that the Bengals swept Pittsburgh? I guess they did a couple years ago, right?
Yeah, they swept them not last year, the year before.
Ben's final season.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
But it's not often that happens.
It's not often, yes.
I think for me, man, I do agree. The Cincinnati thing, it's a good barometer for where the Steelers are and where they need to be, right? I mean, I think that Cincinnati is definitely the favorite to come out of this division. That's not really a surprise to anyone. They're the betting favorite. I think that, in order to be the best, you got to beat the best, right? So I think the Steelers kind of have something to prove, whether it's real or not, but you got to prove that you can beat that team and, kind of take the mantle from them. The Steelers have done a really good job creating turnovers off Burrow last season. Some of those may have been a little bit lucky, but I mean, that was kind of their formula to keeping the games close. They were able to get some turnovers and be just good enough kind of on offense too, even though in that second game, things kind of got a little breakdownish, down the stretch. But, one of the things that Louis Anarumo did that was kind of interesting to me was in the first half of that second Cincy game against Pickett, they started blitzing a ton, and Pickett, especially early in the season, was doing he was actually doing better against the blitz than he was against like teams that were dropping 7 in coverage. And then the second half happened, and he was like, wait, we don't need to do this anymore. And that's a credit to Anarumo because he's so flexible as a defensive coordinator. I think the best defensive coordinators in the league right now aren't guys that have, their system or their way to play. They're the flexible guys that can like not just adjust week to week, because that's what Anarumo is like kind of known for. He adjusts week to week so well based on his opponent, but the ability to adjust mid-game and say like, okay, we need to shift completely because he's doing really well. You talk about that play to Pickens, the touchdown in the corner of the end zone. But I think that's going to be a good test for them, man. Like I said, I got to see them be able to do that. And I kind of want, in my opinion, them to win a little bit of a shootout, just to kind of prove
to show that they can.
Yeah, I think it would be good for the offense, the quarterback's confidence, everybody to know like, hey, like this is one of the most dynamic offenses in the league, but we can outscore them. And I think that would be huge come playoff time, even though I don't think that this offense is really built to do that on a weekly basis. You got to have the ability to do it sometimes. And I think we all kind of know that that's one of the biggest question marks going into the season is, are they going to be able to keep up with these high-powered offense in these big games? Because come playoff time, man, like, the dudes that's going to be there at the end. It's going to be Mahomes. It's going to be Burrow. It's going to be Allen. Yeah. Holding those teams consistently to 17 points, man, it's not realistic, unfortunately, in today's NFL kind of climate. So.
No, you're not going through the AFC playoff race holding Mahomes, Burrow, Allen all to 20 or fewer points. You're gonna have to put up some points at some point. I think that's my biggest hesitation with Pittsburgh this year is like, yes, they got better all over the field, but that offensive coordinator, man, Matt Canada's still there. Will we see him kind of expand the offense a little bit, let them push the ball downfield a little bit more? We can certainly hope so. But until we see proof of that, it's going to be hard to just expect it. And I think that's the biggest thing when it comes to the Steelers this year. Baltimore, they play Baltimore for the first time relatively early on in the season. I think that's week 6. They'll play the Ravens, and then they go to Baltimore the final week of the season. They end on a 2-game road trip against Seattle and the Ravens, 2 potential playoff teams to finish off their year as they're going to be hopefully in a playoff race of their own. Look, the last time they finished off the season in Baltimore, Ben won his final regular season game, punched them into the playoffs, although the Chargers and Raiders did their damnedest to not make that happen. Baltimore, like, I don't mean this as a diss or anything to Lamar. I don't think Mike Tomlin's afraid of him. I think he kind of proved that his rookie year. You remember that game when Duck came in, goes to overtime. Tomlin defers in overtime and gives them the ball. And then they get the ball back. Just so happened that Juju fumbled, and then Justin Tucker was set up for a game-winning field goal. But of Lamar's 6 interceptions that year, 3 of them were against Pittsburgh in that game. He only has, I believe Lamar only has 1 win against Pittsburgh in his career.
Yeah, they've only seen him a couple times.
They've really only seen him a few times, but regardless, I think he's 1-2 against Pittsburgh in his career. I don't. Again, it's not a diss against Lamar. He's a fantastic player, but I don't think Pittsburgh fears him, and I think that they've found really good ways to game plan for him and keep him somewhat grounded.
Yeah, see, for me, it's such a small sample size. Like, I think you have to at least acknowledge the fact that Pittsburgh's been able to do some creative things to kind of keep him in check, while also acknowledging, kind of the big elephant in the room for me is when we're discussing the Ravens, not just in the division race or against Pittsburgh, but just in the NFL like playoff situation. Is Lamar going to be healthy? Like, he hasn't finished the last 2 seasons.
And that's the big question is, okay, how healthy is he going to be? Because, and it's not necessarily his fault either. Like,
just injuries happen.
Both injuries have been freak injuries that have occurred in the pocket. They've been very similar injuries. So I can't blame him too much. You can't blame his run style so much. Some things just happen.
Yeah, and that's what I'm kind of waiting on. People, I think, are excited about, like, Todd Monken's offense, which I am too, just to kind of see Lamar in something different. I think that we can all agree that Greg Roman's offense, while I think that it did fit Lamar's skill set early on in terms of helping him acclimate quickly to the NFL, I do think there was some obvious limitations in their passing game that, again, it's hard to win that type of way in today's NFL if you can't throw the ball, efficiently. And I think that Monken's offense is going to open that, like, they want it to open up. I'm interested to see what that looks like with this group of receivers. If it helps Lamar kind of take a different step with his game. I think Baltimore is going to be good defensively. The one question I have with Baltimore on defense is, do they have enough pass rushers? I don't know if that's the case. They're kind of relying on, Owe kind of taking that next step. They're relying on David Ajabo looking like the guy that we thought he'd be coming out of Michigan after that really bad injury. So, they're going to be a really good team. They're going to be in the mix. Harbaugh's one of those guys, man. He's a floor raiser. He's not going to just roll over. They're going to be in the mix regardless, even if they do suffer an incredible amount of injuries every single year.
Which, by the way, I feel like that's something that's not being talked about enough, is just how injured Baltimore always is and how they seem to do nothing about it.
Yeah, I don't know, man. Some teams, you remember the Chargers used to be like that.
Chargers are still like that.
Yeah, I guess they still are, yeah. I think that's definitely a talking point, man. Because like you talked about, the first time they played was what, week 5, week 6, right?
Yeah, it's early on. It's October 8th.
That's a whole month for however many guys to get injured, and like I think that's
more than enough time for Odell to get injured for whatever reason.
Yeah, and like I think in general, I think Baltimore's going to start off a little bit slower maybe than people expect.
I think that's fair, just trying to get acclimated to the new system and
just
whatnot.
Because Baltimore, here's the thing. They win like 70. If I looked up Lamar's actual like record, I'm pretty sure they win like 70% of his games that he started and finished.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
So Baltimore's gonna be really good if he's in the lineup. That's not my thing. Is he going to be in the lineup down the stretch of the season?
Yeah.
And the thing is, if they do start off a little bit slow, then the injuries start piling up, whether that be to him or someone else. Are they going to be able to they going to still be able to go get one of those wild card spots in what we anticipate as being a really competitive AFC?
Yeah. And you pointed out, maybe the lack of pass rushers. They're going to have the run stoppers. We know that, with Matabuke and Michael Pierce.
Patrick Queen played a lot better last year after they got Roquan. So
yeah. So my question is actually in the secondary. Like, Marlon Humphrey's great, but outside of him, like, Rock Ya-Sin's going to be their number 2. Like, how much do we believe in Rock Ya-Sin? I don't know. But yeah, you pointed out Harbaugh raises their floor. Lamar raises their floor. If all goes well for Baltimore, they're going to be a playoff team. It's just a matter of, all right, can everybody stay on the field? Not even can Lamar stay on the field. As long as 8's in the lineup, then you got to count them as a viable threat.
Yeah, for sure.
So All right. I think that's kind of their biggest games of the year. I mean, we can point out maybe like trips to Los Angeles against the Rams. The Rams have 2, potentially 3 really good players if Stafford's back to his normal self, and then like 50 dudes. They are counting so much on like 5th and 6th round picks to be like contributing players this year. But regardless, I mean, a trip out west is never, something to just brush under the rug. I think that game will be closer than most expect. They host New England. How do you feel about New England going into this year? I don't think they're going to be anything insane.
I am excited to see what Mac looks like with Bill O'Brien. So in that regard, I am curious. I do think their defense is going to be really good. I think that the offense has the potential to look like it did 2 years ago. The question for New England is what does Mac look like this year with a actual like real NFL coordinator, and is it good enough for them to like continue moving forward? I think that Mac will look similar to what he did in his rookie year, which I think is a solid NFL starter. But what's the ceiling? And I don't know if Belichick will be willing to continue down this road if he doesn't feel like, that they can compete with kind of the real horses in AFC. So,
I tweeted after his rookie year, I think that we've probably seen the best of Mac Jones. Like, I think that was his ceiling. And if that's your ceiling, then okay, your ceiling is being a wild card team, but getting boat raced by a team with a real quarterback in the wild card round. So, if that's what you want to be, then cool. But, if you're Belichick, you know that, okay, my time's ticking. I'm not going to be here forever. I would like to contend for at least another championship, especially after Tom Brady won one after leaving.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
my theory, and I don't know how viable this is, but there's going to be, especially if they get DeAndre Hopkins, Arizona's going to be bad this year. There's going to be probably a certain quarterback who's going to be available in 2024. I don't know if Kyler Murray and Bill Belichick would get on, but the talent would be there, and I think that could be very fun to see him and Bill O'Brien together. Obviously, that's a far down the line thought, but if things don't work out with Mac and it's obvious that he's not a needle mover, which I don't think he is, you go and get a guy like Kyler, you might have something.
Yeah, this is a huge year for Mac, man. I'm a Bill O'Brien fan. I think that a lot of the stuff that he does, I think you just watch Alabama's offense last year, they were able to compensate for, in my opinion, kind of a lack of skill weapons kind of on the outside, especially comparative to what they typically have out there. They usually have a bunch of just dudes.
Yeah, they've had a few names over the past few years.
Yeah. So, I mean, New England's an interesting game. They did beat Pittsburgh in Pittsburgh last year. I think the other interesting one for me on the schedule will be Seattle. That's another trip.
Week 17 to the West
Seattle. Coast. So Seattle's really good, man. Like the things that they can do on offense, a really vertical-based offense can really get down the field. But I think Smith and Jigba, man, that was a guy that I kept mocking to Seattle because I just felt like he was the perfect fit for what they were missing. Lockett's fantastic. DK is one of the premier, deep threats in the league.
They have pure slot guy now.
They really needed somebody to move the chains and, get that yards after catch, beat zone coverage underneath. Yeah. So now that they have that guy and, you got those tackles that were rookies last year and Cross and what's Buddy's name on the right side? I forget his name now. But, those guys are going to be better hopefully in year 2. I think Cross is he's going to be a really fantastic tackle of the league. So excited about them. They added Devin Witherspoon in the secondary on defense.
Yeah, Devin Witherspoon and Tariq Woolen. That's a hell of a young tandem.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. So I think Seattle's going to be a good test. I anticipate Seattle. I don't think that they're going to be – if the Niners are healthy, man, I think that they win that division. But I think Seattle's definitely my favorite for getting that top wild card spot. I like Seattle a lot. I like what they've done. Pete Carroll's another guy. Talk about a floor raiser, excellent head coach. Always has his teams, kind of in the mix. So I think they're going to be right there in the NFC.
Yeah, that game against Seattle is going to be. I think that we're going to be paying a lot of attention to who the nickel corner is at that point. Like if they don't establish a guy at that spot like we've seen in years past where they're like struggling to figure out who to put there. Okay, we'll put Trey Norwood there. Okay, we'll put different guys there to see if it was Arthur Millette, just to see what the hell we have. If Shannon Sullivan ends up being that guy, cool. But, if they rely on a bunch of moving parts and Smith and Jigbo's just eating, then it's going to be a long day.
Yeah, for sure. Gino had a fantastic season last year, so I'm excited about seeing seeing if he can do it for another year, play at that really high level. So, going to be a good test for the Steelers secondary, man. Seattle's got one of the better receiving cores that they're gonna face. So.
Absolutely. Before we wrap everything up, record predictions. I think that for the Steelers, I see a floor. I don't see more than 7 losses as a floor. I think 10-7 feels like an expectation at bare minimum, especially after going 9-8 last year. With all the talent that they've added on both sides of the ball, I think that one more win is certainly fair to expect. I think that their ceiling, I mean, if all goes well, their absolute ceiling, I think, is 12 wins. I'm leaning more towards somewhere in the middle of probably 11-6. I think that's very doable.
Yeah, I think when we did our record predictions post draft or whenever we did them, I think I said 10-7. We broke it down game by game. I still think that that's a realistic expectation. I think the Steelers really need to make the playoffs this season.
Absolutely.
I think that should be the expectation in terms of at least getting a wild card spot. I don't know how much more than that they can do. Like I said, I think the big question is, man, can they win a shootout? I got to see them do that before I'm willing to, probably bet on them come January. Just because you watch the NFL playoffs, man. I mean, you're going to have to be at least capable of scoring 30 points. Again, maybe it's not every week. Hopefully those shootouts this year are few and far in between just because, that means the defense is healthy. That means the defense is playing at a high level. TJ Watt's in the lineup. But I do want to see them in a couple of shootouts with some good teams because I want to see if they can do it. So if that becomes a thing that I'm confident in, 11 wins, potentially 12 wins, maybe in a playoff game, playoff win. I think that those things are all definitely possible if they prove that they can at least, score 30 points.
I think that their ceiling, I think they can win the AFC North. I mean, you followed me for a while. I think I'm a pretty level-headed fan when it comes to all right, let's temper expectations a little bit. Mm-hmm. I don't know how the script flipped this year, where I think a lot of Steelers fans are like, we'll see. I think that we haven't seen a team since division realignment win the AFC North 3 consecutive years. The Bengals have won it the last 2. I don't think Baltimore is going to be healthy enough to win it, so it opens the door for Pittsburgh to maybe steal a division this year. We've talked about it. I like the roster. Obviously, Mike Tomlin's going to keep you in it. I think that their ceiling is winning the division, hosting a playoff game as like the 4 seed, maybe playing Cincinnati and probably getting bounced in the wild card round. But just getting this young team some playoff experience and some big boy football in January, I think that goes a long way. Maybe they can steal a wild card game, but I absolutely don't see them getting past the divisional round if they do end up making the playoffs.
Yeah, it's just tough, man. Like, I think it's going to depend on, what does Kenny look like in year 2? We would need to see a pretty significant jump, I feel like, to get on that type of bandwagon to where you're talking about potentially competing for a chance to go to the AFC Championship game.
Right.
I mean, we've talked about it really all through the show, like with the different matchups and things that we want to see. I mean, the NFL is a quarterback league, man, and it's always going to be. If you have an elite quarterback, I mean, Pittsburgh fans in general, they're used to that.
We know.
Haven't been for a decade and a half, almost 2 decades, playing at that really elite level. When you have a franchise type of quarterback or an elite quarterback that you win because of, it gives you a chance every single week, regardless of who's in the lineup, who you're playing, the venue, where it's at, the conditions. It doesn't matter. And I think we need to see what type of player Kenny is and what type of ceiling that he potentially has. And I think we'll have a lot better idea this year with a full offseason, a full training camp of reps, definitely having more of a, rapport with the receivers and things like that. So I'm excited to see what that looks like. And I think that's going to go a long way into answering a lot of everybody's questions.
Derrick, good stuff, buddy. What can the good people check out from you?
I'm still the same thing, man. Y'all can follow me on Twitter. My handle's in the on the screen, but my YouTube channel that I just opened up a couple months ago as well. Y'all can check that out. It's the same handle, Steelers_DB. So yeah, man, excited. Hopefully we can get back together before the season or sometime during the season to talk some ball.
Oh, absolutely, my friend. I'm sure there's going to be points where we'll be really excited to do it and points where we're just really irritated and need to vent. So I'm always on board for either one of them. Appreciate you doing the show with me today. Everybody who's watching it right now, you can check out my latest on USA Today, my power rankings. Check those out, 32-1. You can see where I have Pittsburgh, maybe a little bit higher than most people. That's fine. So go and check that out. My quarterback rankings as well on USA Today. Go read those. Yeah, a bunch of stuff going on. Check out the rest of the YouTube channel, watch the tape, all that stuff. Appreciate y'all watching. It's been fun, buddy. We'll talk on the Twitters.
Sounds good, brother. I appreciate you.
Appreciate everybody for watching. We'll see you next time on Black and Gold Breakdown.